Developed in the early 24th century, the Antares class was a capable, limited production run variant of the Miranda-class light cruiser developed for use as a patrol and reconnaissance vessel by Starfleet. The primary difference between a ship of the Antares class and the stock Miranda being the deletion of the ship's torpedo roll pod with a large sensor pod to extend the ship's range and the resolution across the board of the new sensor package installed aboard the ship. During the 23rd century, the frontiers of the United Federation of Planets had exploded outwards in all directions, bringing the government from a small regional power with around 24 members into an explosive local superpower with hundreds of member races and tens of thousands of cubic light-years to patrol, defend, and maintain. Faced with this much increased responsibility, Starfleet had struggled throughout the last century to adequately fulfill its numerous missions. Traditional cruisers and frigates were available in too limited numbers to properly patrol the Federation frontier, leading to a steady stream of small scout ship and escort vessels being produced to fill in these numbers. Ships such as the Ranger class, produced in the 2270s, were ideal on paper. Small, cheap, and above all else, disposable, capable of warning larger ships of threats or issues encountered, and little else. These ships held little purpose other than conducting prolonged patrols of quiet regions of space in order to free up larger and more important vessels for more active assignment. Fortunately, or unfortunately, depending on where you stand on the issue of military expansion, the various arms races the Federation was engaged in during the period would see the problem of limited numbers largely solved, thanks to the production of classes such as the Ayakazi-class perimeter action ship, Oberth-class science ship and its derivatives, as well as the aforementioned Ranger. These ships would begin to reach the end of their space frame lifespans in the 2320s, and Starfleet would once again be finding themselves needing large numbers of patrol ships quickly to cover the vast distances of the Federation borders. But this time around there was a solution, or at least there promised to be: technology. Several decades of advancement in combat sensor technology, compact, resolution, and range being made in the meantime, Starfleet quickly developed a small, relatively speaking, pod which could be installed in the large number of surplus Miranda-class ships floating around, as a cheap and cheerful alternative to a purpose-built starship class. And that's what Starfleet did. The refit involved minimal effort, despite the vastly altered performance and capabilities between the original Miranda and the refit vessels. Little more in essence than swapping the torpedo pod with the sensor system being required. The decision to dub the ships which received the refits as the Antares class was made shortly before the first vessel to undergo the refit program, the USS Antares, commissioned. It was largely a political one, as Starfleet could present the program in the best light possible. Rather than being a cost-saving measure in one of the fleet's most important missions, Starfleet could argue they were commissioning totally new starships using components of older vessels. Antares-class ships often keeping their previous names but receiving new NCC numbers when they underwent the refit. This plan would rely on the politicians not delving too deeply into the ships or what else was done to the ships, but would see significant success and be followed with subsequent refit programs of the Miranda class moving forward. Antares would join Starfleet after a 3-month refit in 2331, followed by numerous sisters, most of the Antares that were converted coming from the Miranda 3 variant. The vessels would serve for the next several decades through hard use, acting as visible symbols of Starfleet's presence throughout the outer reaches of the Federation. Much of their time being spent patrolling the borders, conducting sensor sweeps, chasing pirates, smugglers, and answering distress calls. All manner of mundane and less than interesting and engaging roles that a Starfleet vessel could perform. This uninspiring service would typify most members of the class, and many would be decommissioned during the 2360s, though a few holdovers would survive to serve in their sensor pickets roles during the Dominion War. Most Antares-class ships would be refit into Miranda drones and see service in that way during the war. While often overlooked as merely one of a myriad of uninspired Miranda variants produced in the early 24th century, the Antares class provided service in a critical role for the Federation on an inexpensive and capable platform. The vessels introducing a new generation of sensor platforms and technology, which would go on to be used aboard subsequent classes of starships in the next generations to come. This video was sponsored by my Patreons, because I don't have a sponsor. This is a small channel with just over 1,000 subscribers, and nobody's gonna look for it. Well, Raid might. Raid Shadow Legends or Raycons. Are they still doing ads? I have ad block. Anyway, this video is sponsored by nobody but my Patreons. There's a link below. $1 a month gets you certain perks. I'm sure you've heard this whole thing. Raycons is still doing a thing, come to think of it. There's a four-wheeler in the background. You know what? Change of plans. This video is sponsored by Random Four-Wheeler. Can we all give Random Four-Wheeler a big hand in the comments? I got nothing else. Hope you enjoyed the video. Have a good day. All that stuff. Goodbye.